Hello. So I saw your post here on the Maya forum about your door rig, and it's not that hard to achieve, but I thought I make a quick video just to show you because it's easier than explaining it in text. What we're gonna do is we're gonna use set-driven keys to achieve this. Set-driven keys are basically just animation that doesn't listen to the timeline, but instead listens to another attribute on another object. So let's switch over to Maya and get started. Okay, so we are in Maya. As you can see, I recreated your door. Obviously, it's not the exact same proportions as yours because I didn't have your file. But the idea should come across pretty easily, even if it's a bit different proportions. So the first thing, as you can see, I have all my objects over here and I named them accordingly. But they're at the moment all parented under world, and that's not too nice. I want them to be in a neat hierarchy that I then can later use to duplicate easily. So I'm selecting all my meshes, and I hit Command G or Control G if you're on Windows to create a group above them. And I name this group door mesh GRP. So, and now this is a group where all my meshes go in, and I want another group that everything in my door setup will go in. So I'm hitting Control or Command G again, and I call this group door master GRP. So, as you can see, I have now two groups. Both of them are at the world origin, and in those groups I have my meshes. Now I want to create a joint for each of my meshes. I create joints to animate my meshes because I want my animation to be deformation, not transformation. Those are two different types of animation in Maya. And transformation basically means you animate an object in the world. Deformation means you animate the components of an object. And the thing is that some renderers have problem when it comes to motion blur and similar calculations when you use transformation on renderable objects. So you should use a deformer or you should use deformation or deformer to animate every time. I think for setups like this, skin cluster deformer is the way to go. Okay, now since I want to create a joint for each object that I have here, I could do this manually, but I'm lazy, so I'm gonna use a script for this. We're actually gonna write the script together pretty quick. What I want the script to do is just to create a joint for each object, match the position of the object, and give it a name that tells me which object the joint belongs to. So I'm gonna open up my script editor and write that script real quick. You can follow along, it's gonna be pretty easy. So I'm opening up my script editor with this little icon on the bottom right. So your script editor probably is gonna look a lot less messy than mine because I have a ton of tabs open. But what you need to do basically is go to the right of all your tabs and hit the plus. And we're going to use Python for this script because Python is the language I'm most familiar with. So I'm opening up the Python tab. First thing in Python I always need to do is import the commands library, which is import maya.cmds as MC. So I just give it the name MC because Maya commands. Now every time I type in MC, Maya knows that Python knows that I want to use the commands library. So as I said, I wanted to do this for selected objects. So I need to get my selection. So I type in SCL for selection, mc.ls, so the list command, and then SL equals true. Now what this does is basically it lists all my selected objects. This flag tells it, look for selected objects. Now I want to loop through these, so I'm going to use a for loop for s in SEL. First thing, when you create joins, you can't have multiple objects selected at the time, because the join command will parent the join to the selection. That's pretty useful for when you create join chains, but I don't want any join chains here, so I'm just gonna make sure that my selection has nothing in it. So I'm gonna write MC select CL equals true. So that clears my selection. Now I'm defining the variable JNT for joint, and I tell it mc.joint, so it creates a joint, and then I use n, which is the flag for name, and in this name I do list comprehension string formatting. So this part here just takes something I give it in a list, and then I add the underline J and T in the back, so it's named, so it has a joint in the end. And now format S, so the name of the object we are currently looking at in our loop. So this will name my joint like the mesh I'm currently looking at, and add a suffix so I know it's a joint. That's my naming conventions. If you have different ones, use those obviously. So next thing, I want my joint to be at the same position as my mesh. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get the matrix of my mesh. I store it in a variable mat. Then I use the xform command to get the matrix from S. To get a matrix, I just type in m equals true. I want the world space of it. World space equals true. And then q equals true. That means I'm querying something, I'm not setting something. So I'm querying the world matrix of my object that I'm looking at. And now I'm gonna give this same matrix to my joint. So I'm using the xform command again, this time without defining the variable. And I tell it, give it to J and T, to the joint. And then m equals mat, so the matrix we stored, world space equals true. So this now, if I select all my objects over here, should create a joint for each object and have that object, and have it named after the object. So let's test out if that works. I select all my objects and then I run it using those two blue arrows, the execute all command. Now, as you can see, we have joints for all our objects. That's nice. They're positioned correctly. They're a bit big, but I mean, that's just joint display size. That doesn't really matter. I mean, I can go to my display, animation, joint size, and just take the joint size down. So it doesn't distract me and it doesn't look as overlapping. Good. Now I can close the script editor again. I now want to create a group for all my joints. So it's select all of them and hit Ctrl G, get a group, and I call it door rig grp. Good. And this group I'm now gonna middle mouse drag into my master group, so I have it here. Now the thing is, those two joints now are not in the right positions for the moment, so I'm gonna change that, because at the moment they're just in the middle of the door. I want them obviously to be where the hinge of the door would be. So I'm selecting this, I'm holding down V to vertex snap, and I snap it to the inner vertex of my door. I do the same on the other side. to the inner. So now there where the door rotates. Good. Now I need to quickly give each of the objects a skin cluster so they move with the joints, because at the moment when I move my joints, nothing happens. And you can do this pretty easily. You just select the mesh, then you select the joint that belongs to the mesh, and then you go to skin, bind skin. I'm just gonna quickly open the options. I just want to do closest distance and select the joints, and the rest doesn't matter because I'm only selecting one mesh at a time and one joint at a time. And then I just hit apply. So I create a skin cluster. Same for the next one, apply. Same for the next one, apply. Apply. Top pole, apply. 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 Good. Now when I move my joint now, as you can see, the door moves with it. Good. Now this is the base setup of it. I can close my skinning window again. With the base setup done, there's one last thing that I need for the base setup, and that's a NURBS curve, a controller that I'm gonna use to control my door. So I'm just creating a NURBS circle. You can create a fancier control, obviously, but for this small tutorial, NURBS circle will do. I just move it over to the side, rotate it 90 degrees, move it up. Good. So this is now next to my door, and I'm gonna call it door underline CTRL, and I'm gonna middle mouse drag it into my door rig group. Now I don't need all of the translates and scales and whatever. I just gonna lock and hide those. I leave the visibility on for now. And I'm gonna add a new attribute. Add attribute, and I'm calling it open underscore door. The nice name is gonna be open door. And I'm gonna make it a float with a minimum of 0 and a maximum of 1. Default is 0, so the door by default is closed. Good. Then I hit OK, and as you can see, we have this attribute now. Now creating the set driven key. I go to my animation tool set. I go into key, set driven key, set. This opens this window. Now the driver is the controller that drives whatever action we're animating, and the driven are the objects we're animating. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hit load driver, because my door control is what I wanna drive my animation with. Then I'm gonna select all my joints and select load driven. Whenever you select a driven, you can see you get those attributes over here, which you then can add animation to. Something I want to do before I do this is I want to put my box joints, so the joints that are for the yellow and red boxes, under my pole joint. So they're parented under it, so when I move the pole, I also move the boxes. So I'm just taking my 4 box joints, and then I select the pole joint last, and I hit P on my keyboard to parent them. So now when I move my pole joint, the boxes move with it. Okay, so that's a little bit of cleaning up, which will make it easier to animate the boxes later, because we only have to worry about one axis at a time with them. Okay, so the first thing I want to do with my animation is I'm gonna select all of my joints here, and I'm just gonna key rotation and translation for them. So I'm adding key. As you can see, it gives this like dark blue indicator next to your values. That means that there is a set driven key active on this joint. Okay, now with this keyed, this means now that all of them have a key value for open door 0. And now I'm gonna go into my door control and I'm setting open door to 1. And then I will first just animate my door wings. I take my door wing and I open it up. I think in your animation they were not opened up fully in the end. So I'm just gonna go to, let's say, 85 in rotate Y, and also minus 85 in rotate Y here, which from the length of the pole I think maybe it's a bit too open, too wide. Then I'm just gonna go to 80. Same over here with the other joint, just give it 80. Okay, and I mean, you already made your animation, you know the values correctly for yourself. And then I'm just gonna select the wing joints here, and I'm gonna key the rotation. I actually only need to key the Y rotation, but it doesn't matter because the other rotations I'm not gonna touch. It doesn't matter if I have other keys on them. So I'm keying this, and then I'm selecting my pole joint. So I have my pole joint, and as I saw in your video, your pole just basically moves straight forward. So like this, links up, and then I select my translates, even though I would only need to use the translate X. I just key all of them. So now I have keys, and now when I go here, I select open door and then middle mouse drag to animate to go through the values. You can see on 0 it's closed, on 1 it's open, but as you also can see, it has an ease in and ease out, and I don't want an ease in and ease out. Generally, you don't want ease-ins and ease-outs on set-driven keys, because the animator himself will make his own ease-ins and ease-outs for motions like that, unless you want a preset animation that every door always opens the same. Then you can leave an ease-in, ease-out in there, but generally speaking, animators will want to do that themselves. So I go to Window, Animation Editors, Graph Editor. And as you now can see, if I go to my pole, I select my pole and I select my wing joints. As you can see, we have now animations here. This animation is not on the timeline, as you can see, but it's as a set-driven key on the other value. So the values from 0 to 1 are our open door values, and I just select all my keyframes, and I'm gonna create linear tangents. So now I don't have an ease in, ease out on them. So when I once again go to my open close door, now I don't have an ease in, ease out. And now I just need to animate the boxes correctly. They already have a keyframe on the first value. Now I saw that with about 45 degrees, they meet up, your boxes. They slide towards each other and they meet up about 45 degrees. So since I go to 80 degrees, I'm just going to the middle for the moment, which is probably a bit too not enough, so I'm going to 0.6. And now I'm just taking my door box joints, I'm moving them to the correct positions. I just can copy the translate C value over to the other side. And just instead of negative, I make it positive. Same for the yellow box. Copy. And paste. Okay, the red box is, I took the wrong value from the red box. Yeah, okay. Copy and paste. Just like this. And then I need to select my box joints and key their translation key. Okay, and now I just go to my value 1 and I move my boxes out. So first I select those two, move them outward so they're in the middle of the door. And for this one, I just gonna eyeball it. You can go with the exact values just for a little bit of speed here, just eyeballing it. Okay, and I set another key. And now, if I go to my open and close door, it does your animation. So yeah, this is how you set this up. So if you have a position in there where you think, oh, my red box and my yellow box don't do what I want, like maybe you want your red box to be a bit more out here or something, you can just go in and add more animation keyframes. So I can just go into my red box joint and say, okay, now you need to lag behind a bit more. So I'm moving those, I'm just adding another keyframe, and then it will lag behind a bit more. That's about it. I hope it helps. Have a nice day.